Паречка помутилась, а с милой разлучилась я, Рома, Паречка помутилась, а с милой разлучилась я, Рома,
I was sitting there and he grabbed me and he started doing all this fancy stuff and I just sort of danced around in a circle and got embarrassed. And then the other two, the Soviet women, came up and danced and I sort of tried to follow them and fake it.
Heel and toe, slide, 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 slide. Heel and toe, slide, 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 slide. Right, 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 left, 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 both, both, both. You don't need me.
Check my bag.
Slide, 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 slide. Right, 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 left, left, left. Heel and toe, slide.
was just an incredible happening that was pretty much spontaneous. Even though it was kind of semi-arranged, it turned real spontaneous. Like their band members came over and started playing flutes and horns to old-timey music. They were the ones that started up with Old Lang Syne and When the Saints Go Marching In, things like that. So there's definitely a common bond, in music and dance between everybody, really. But the thing that was so emotional about the whole thing was this Russian guy at the end got up and gave this about 10-minute monologue and had it translated about all kinds of things.
У нас, в общем-то, между вами такие какие-то натянутые отношения. Не здесь, а между нашими странами, между нашими народами, да, общие такие отношения. Не хотелось бы, чтобы это продолжалось дальше, понимаете? Не хотелось смотреть.
At this point, the relations between our countries is a little bit tense, and we would like to see them to stop and some relaxation become there.
Хотелось бы смотреть на Эда, на Степана через прицел автомата и прочее, понимаете? Эд, мы друг друга уже братом назвали.
Really, I wouldn't want to look at Ed or at David or at Stephen through the muzzle of the gun. Because we already called each other brothers here.
Хочется быть братьями и друзьями, встречаться только на сцене и вот так вот в зале.
We would like to be brothers and friends and meet only in the dancing hall. Пусть этот мир дружбы никогда не разомкнется. Пусть этот круг никогда не разомкнется.
Даш, переведи, а.
Пусть этот мир дружбы никогда не разомкнется. Russian banners tries.
Ну, счастливо. Все у тебя было хорошо.
All the best. И вам также.
So we left Krasnodar on one side of the Caucasus Mountains and jumped on a bus on our way to Novorossiysk, the sister city. What's it going to be like? Rode a couple, 3 hours and came down the mountain, and there it was, tucked in against the south side of the Caucasus Mountains. Gorgeous, gorgeous Black Sea, busy port, big ships, and so the city we saw was new. But in commemoration of the battles and the losses that people suffered, The city was designated a hero city, one of the 11 in the Soviet Union. And the monuments that were constructed reflect the importance of these events.
Novorossiysk was one of the, I think, probably 4 or 5 crucial cities where the German drive was stopped. And it's exciting in the city to be taken to the point and to see the monuments where this really actually happened. And the city of Novorossiysk is the major port, apparently the best deep water port on the Black Sea. The city itself is ringed in by hills, and at the cement factories is where the battle went on and where the Nazis were stopped. They could go no further, and exactly that point is marked by a series of memorials, a brutal wall with hands grasping in weapons, Tommy guns and the rest. So part of the memorial is a boxcar that was obviously involved in the battle itself, and one is told that there were some 10,000 bullet holes in it. So here the Germans were held. And while the battle went on, perhaps for much of a year, during which time the population of the city were killed or fled, the Russians, feeling that the pressure might become too strong, decided they must divert the German strength. And so at night, they sent boats across the harbor and landed behind the German lines. Now, there are all sorts of memorials there, and the most important one for the Russians, one that I think many of the Americans felt was somewhat overdone with the pumping red heart and such, is shaped like the prow of a ship, and you go inside, and inside there are memorials and pictures and the rest. This is something very important to them. And you get a sense of this is when you see in every town or every city that at least there was where important battles were fought, there's a war memorial, a flame, an everlasting flame that's never put out, and on which guard is continuously maintained. And the guards who come are students, members of Soviet youth organizations, to which everybody belongs, the Komsomol. And apparently they compete, and the outstanding students are privileged to take their period guarding the unextinguishable flame. And they'll come marching in, holding their Kalashnikovs and submachine guns, goose-stepping in tents, with a sense that this is probably the most important moment of their lives. And I thought, my God, for yet another reason, I don't hope that we don't fight the Russians. I think if and the Russians were to go to war, the Russian youth would not be going to Sweden or elsewhere.
This whole socialization of Russia, by that I mean the children growing up and learning and internalizing the knowledge of what had gone on, particularly in the Second World War, and not only that, not only being taught that in school, but actually acting it out as protectors of the war memorials. The other aspect to this is the war memorials are all covered with flowers. And when you ask where the flowers come from, they say they come from the brides. And this strikes you as being a curious thing. And we saw in Kiev, for example, as we were coming away from the huge war memorial complex and park, a bride and groom drive up in their car, get out of their car, take their flowers from their wedding and walk off to the monument to place their flowers on the war memorial. And this was true in every place he went. All these memorials had flowers on them, and they were all presented by brides and grooms. So that I think this teaching the people about war and what had happened to Russia in the Great Second World War is a much more vibrant part of their culture than we have here in the United States.
While we were in Novorossiysk, we had an interesting opportunity to go into a Soviet home. That was the mother of Natasha Kalishman, who lives there, and she brought in her neighbors and her friend that had worked in the factory with her for 20 years. The friend's husband had been a merchant seaman on the ships, and we got a feeling of really meeting the real Russian people. It was a wonderful evening. I felt that I was in an apartment in Israel. I find great similarities between Israel and the Soviet Union, or it could have been an apartment in the Lower East Side of New York. Small and open with a little balcony, makeshift tables, one added onto the other, nice linens, nice china, obviously some treasures from the family that had been passed down. Lots of good homemade food, lots of informality. It reminded me more of a dinner party before the age of television and radio, where we would create hours and hours of group entertainment by intellectual inquiry and conversation. And one gets a feeling that that kind of thing is still going on in Russia.
So in Novorossiysk, then we were off to a kindergarten, one of the famous Soviet kindergartens. The climax of that visit was a performance that the kindergarten kids did for us, singing and dancing. And the highlight of that performance was they took an American song and put a little dance to it and asked us to get up and dance with them, which is a nice turnabout for us because we'd been doing it to the Soviet citizens in Moscow and in Krasnodar. And it struck me that the parallel, people dance and the people sing, and it's all one. And that if we're not young people, we're not children, but we find a common ground with those who share the music. And I kind of have to hope that those people just the people that we danced with and who ask us to dance, remember us as we remember them. And that will start some sort of chain that when they grow up and have children and our children know about this, that the chances for a little bit less clouded relationship between Soviet citizens and American citizens will be better. So we were in Novorossiysk, the place toward which we've been working for a year. The first thing on our mind was, well, let's dance. Let's dance. But nothing seemed to be going on. So we started trying to find out what's happening with our reception here and our performance here. Not much information was forthcoming. The next day, I went to a meeting that I thought was going to be with the city commission. It turned out to be with the deputy mayor, deputies mayor.
The meeting at the city council was disappointing to a certain aspect because a very popular commissioner had just died. The mayor was out of town fussing with his budget. So we met mainly with the cultural affairs director and the deputy minister, the deputy mayor, I guess, of Novorossiysk, and some people from utilities and other folks that would be interested. A warm reception, I felt, in more ways than one. The temperature was 104 degrees that day. Lots of protocol, a long speech that had to be interpreted that repeated some of the things that we heard that morning of a rich and brave history.
And each of us did our little speech, and I told the man that, terribly interested, the reason we're here is to dance. Dance for him and dance with him. And for us, that was the very first priority. So that started some scrambling, and it turned out nothing really had been set up in advance. But the guy that was the cultural affairs director was real interested. I mean, he was 100% for us. There wasn't any problem there. And we finally got a performance in Novorossiysk. I mean, a setting that you couldn't ask any better for. The sound was wonderful, professional sound people, great weather, perfect time of day. And just because we were there making noise, attracted a pretty nice crowd. Gave one of the shows of our lifetime. High energy, good connection with the crowd, and a crowd of people from a grandmother that I kept being tempted to jump off the stage and hug, to the little tiny children. And that hour that we spent there was a very valuable hour, and it might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but at the time, it made the year's work worth it.
When the new day begins, I go down to the cotton gin and I make my time worthwhile to them. Then I climb back home again, 'cause she waits by the door. Oh, Cotton Jenny, I'm sore, and she rolls my feet as the sun goes down, and the wheels of love go round, wheels of love go round.
The Cultural Affairs Director of Novorossiysk, Sasha Titov, escorted Gene Chalmers and Natasha and I to the concert. And as we arrived on the scene, it was the most remarkable thing, because there you had the Caucasus Mountains, the harbor, the ships, and on an elevated concrete platform, there were the cloggers doing their clogging and music and dancing with the people of Novorossiysk. There was a crowd of 500 people at least, and it was just, it was thrilling for me to come up and see that, because there's never been anything like that in Novorossiysk. I think that really made me feel that this was the culmination of our efforts for the last 3 years, and I think everyone was really stunned by the whole event. And we really had the cooperation of the people, the City Council of Novorossiysk, and the Cultural Affairs Director, who went on stage and danced with the cloggers along with other people there that were watching the concert. So that was just an incredible event.
Now, we'd like to have you join us to do a dance.
А теперь мы приглашаем вас на танец.
You don't need to know any dances to do this. We'll help you.
Совершенно не обязательно уметь танцевать, мы вас научим.
Whoever would like to join in our dance may come up on the stage.
Итак, все те, кто хотят присоединиться к нам, выходите на...
First of all, that we want that there's never war on
Самое главное,
this
чтобы наши,
planet.
как говорится, обоюдные страны жили
And
в
that
мире и в
both our
дружбе.
countries make good friends.
Тем более наша
The
страна
last dance in
знает уже
Novorossiysk, it was as good as it could get. We wish there had been more, but it was now time to go home. And we headed on by way of Leningrad. Checked into a beautiful hotel and spent some time walking around the city and learning things that I just wondered where I'd been all my life. Why did I just now find out that Leningrad had been under siege for 3 years in the Second World War, and that 1 million people had died in and around Leningrad? It's incomprehensible. Gorgeous city, beautiful city, the Venice of the North. were highlights in Leningrad, and there were highlights in Novorossiysk, and there were highlights in Moscow. But the highlight of the trip then was the night in Krasnodar at a party with some other dancers and singers from the nightclub there. And one of their dancers was a tap dancer, and he was going to show us something, but he didn't have any shoes with taps on it. Well, I had mine with me. And so I lent him my shoes, just because it was easier that way. And he slipped them on and he started to dance. Perfectly normal, no problem. Then it hit me. This is a Russian. And he's got your shoes on. You sweat in those shoes today. You danced in those shoes yourself today, and there's your sweat. And now he's got them on and he's dancing in them, and there's his sweat. And the two of us have been in the same shoes. I could, wax philosophic on the depth of the metaphor, but I think that's enough said. That when I dance now, I know that somebody else has been there. The only thing I regret is that he didn't teach my shoes how to dance better.